Hi guys, this is a first for me and for Eric. We're doing a video podcast this time. What have you been up to?
I've just been working and training, but other than those two things, I've also been staying at home playing a few games and even still doing my little thing of looking through various mangas that have recently been updated. At this point, because I've finished so many mangas quite quickly, I've decided, you know what, I'll just pick through the most latest updated ones. Pick the ones I like, make a list of them, and then come back to them in about a year once they've all finished or updated some more. Seems to be working so far since I've seen quite a few updates for some of those existing mangas. But other than that, that's what I've pretty much been doing, reading through those. Most of them have been isekai type mangas, so yeah, I've actually become a bit of a fan of these ones. Just to see what kind of various ideas comes from, plopping someone from our world, the modern world where there's no magic, no monsters, nothing like that, and popping them into a place where there is everything like that. There's a few different ideas that fly around there. A recent one I have read, which is, I can't remember the name of it, but it features the story of a classroom that gets wiped out. And so the students all get somehow transported to another world, and one in particular gets reborn as a spider. And yeah, I know that's a new one for me. So
Is it kind of like that slime one where he gets
yeah, essentially, but worse. The spider is if you like Monster, or if you've heard of Monster, same idea. But unlike Monster, where it's obvious the main character is just going to get completely overpowered, this version of it tones down the over the top leveling up and the over the top gaining of skills, and just kind of keeps it to a much more I guess to a much more level playing field. You have a little spider that has all the power and strength of a little spider, even in a world where magic and monsters exist. So you don't have a little spider suddenly becoming powerful enough to take on heroes in the span of, 20, 30 chapters. You instead have a little spider that even now, I believe 30 or 40 chapters in, still struggles against level 10 monsters that are basically our equivalent of eels, blowfish, frogs, all those kinds of things. You've already seen. You would have already seen if you read this manga. You would have already seen a few monsters like dragons up there in the 30 levels. Essentially, look like big, massive bosses to this spider, and it's good to see because you do. It is a good perspective to see from a main isekai character that doesn't, immediately become overpowered, and instead has to struggle through and realize how overpowered everyone else is. So that's what I've been enjoying. And in terms of watching anime, not much. I've been watching a little bit of Fate Grand Order, Babylonia. Because I do like Fate Grand Order.
Yeah, is that connected to the Fate series, the Fate Stay Night?
Nothing really ever gets connected to the Fate series.
I just hear Fate and I think like, oh, is that a Fate Stay Night?
As far as I can tell, the main timeline with that story is Fate Zero and then Fate Stay Night.
Okay.
And then Fate Stay Night diverges into 3 timelines. And then after that is spin-offs or parallel universes or maybe even the future. It's a mess, but it does give, the creators an excuse to turn well-known historical and mythic and legendary heroes into essentially, characters they can play around with. And not just that, apparently Fate Grand Order includes gods even. So we have one of the gods, Ishtar, included in this whole thing. Ishtar is, of course, possessing the body of Rintosaka, and I don't know really from there what happens. It's a bit of a mess, and I am not even going to try and start to figure this out. I'm just going to enjoy the entertainment there, especially since Fate Grand Order Babylonia has some fantastic looking animation and scenery, and just the characters look, they look okay, not too different. But it is something I'm enjoying before the latest Fate Grand Order series is coming out, which features the Knights of Camelot and the Knights of the Round Table. And that already, and from the trailer already, it just looks really beautiful. So that's something I'm going to be looking forward to. And what about you, Connor?
Well, I'm still watching Konosuba.
Okay.
And I'm actually enjoying that. I didn't think I'd enjoy that. Some of the humor's, like, not for me, but then some of the humor is for me. And I don't really like isekai stuff, but it's funny, and it pokes fun at some stuff.
Yeah, it does have a bit of humor here and there for us. So.
I've been watching that. I've been so busy that I got more work this week, so
that's right.
I haven't actually had much time to, other than the stuff to this week. I had like 1 or 2 nights where I was able to sort of go, okay, I can watch this, I can read this, I can do this. So I've actually done probably more reading than watching.
Yeah, that's fair.
I've read most of the manga Real, which is the basketball manga I think I talked about like a couple episodes ago.
A while back.
It's done by the guy who did Slam Dunk, Vagabond, and something else. But he's got a really interesting art style. It's one of the few... It's going to sound weird saying this, but it's one of the few manga sort of artists that actually... His characters actually look Asian. Like, he actually makes them look Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah, so like there's no... You know, it's not like when you read a manga and you're like, is this character white? Is this character... You know, they're called this and... You know, they're blonde hair, but like, nah. All the characters, like, even if they're meant to have, like, sort of dyed hair, like red or whatever, they look Japanese. Okay. Or the race they're supposed to be. There's one guy who I think's meant to be, like, mixed race or something.
Okay.
But it's really good, though, yeah. Well, we might review it, because I've read all of it, and it's really interesting. The best parts of it are actually not even the basketball.
Is it kind of like Hajime no Ippo in the case that it does have a bit of focus on techniques in terms of...
No, that's probably more Slam Dunk. This is more... It's called Real because I think it's trying to be realistic in terms of its approach to storytelling.
So no Kuroko no Basket special abilities.
Definitely not that.
Where your eyes glow shiny and you suddenly get a burst of power that lets you go past 10 people at once.
No. And it's not like Slam Dunk where like the basketball matches take 5 episodes.
Oh my god.
Which is kind of funny because basketball matches, they don't take 5 episodes, but you have many rounds in basketball sometimes.
Yeah, I'll believe you on that. I don't know much about the rules of basketball.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a massive basketball head. My brother likes basketball and I like the Raptors team, so... Yeah, and this manga, it got me already when one of the characters is like, he's the Vince Carter of the team. I was like, oh, they're making a classic Raptors reference. Like, they're making when they had the purple, you know, when they had the purple outfits on. Which is like, I think that's 90s. It's a little bit before I was watching, but like, you know, I've got a Vince Carter joke. I've seen some of his matches. He's a damn good player. And he's not playing for the Raptors anymore. He might have not been playing for the Raptors actually when the manga came out, maybe. So it might be. I didn't look up when the manga came out, but I think it's 90s. I think I may be wrong. But Three's a really interesting manga because it not only tackles the like the basketball stuff and wheelchair basketball. Like, it doesn't get into the technical aspect, but it does show games and stuff. And
the manga you're talking about is Real, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you said Free.
Oh.
Yeah, that's,
I made a slip, okay.
Yeah, you were starting to sound a little too profound there, and I was thinking, oh god, has Connor lost it? Oh dear.
Hey, To each his own. If people like free, it's their thing.
But I know
For
it
me,
exists. I'm just wondering why you're talking about it.
Okay. I slurred one of my words or something. I'll maybe edit or not edit this. I can make myself look more stupid.
Oh wait. I joined in one of those.
Either way, I checked out Real. I enjoyed it. I've finished it, and the most interesting aspect of Real, not free, Real, is the Jesus, I can't concentrate now. is the actually it's like the part they focus on that I don't see in a lot of other manga is they show what it's like to have like your leg go paralyzed, be in a hospital bed, and then go through rehabilitation with all that, and then
so it shows the before, during, and after of someone who's
he doesn't get his legs back necessarily, but he has to learn how to do I can't remember what it's called, but where you've got to lift yourself off the ground onto a mat. I can't remember what it's exactly called, but it's something everybody who's in a wheelchair has to know how to do.
Yeah.
And he learns how to like build strength in his arms and things like that, and how to some people like they show some people depending on where they're paralyzed can get to the point where they can learn how to walk again and get their feet moving again, but I don't know with our main character's case because he's got a spinal cord injury.
Okay.
Which I think means his lower half is completely out of it.
Yeah, that kind of depends.
Yeah, I think he's
different parts of the spine might affect you in different ways if it's injured in some way.
It's relatively clear with some of that information, but not so clear.
I know that I know a friend of mine didn't exactly get too many injuries, but he had a slip disc in his spine. So the slip disc didn't allow him for 100% of what he could do. So he was walking stiff a bit, essentially, as he'd like to describe it. And then more than that, he had to at least one of his legs was near paralyzed. So for a while, he's had to stay at home and kind of stretch his legs out and just make sure he's essentially trying to at least keep some motor movement in the leg to make sure that it doesn't. I can't remember the word, but the state in which the leg just kind of deteriorates without any sort of actual action performed on it. Yeah,
it's when it almost sort of falls asleep.
Pretty much.
I do think what the manga does really well, that I was in hospital last year for a surgery, as Eric knows. And,
you sent me a picture.
Jesus, that photo.
I thought you were on drugs in that picture.
I sent him...
This is what he looked like.
Well, I sent him and my uncle this photo of me, like, in basically what you wear when you go in for an operation. With my head all bandaged up. And I didn't give any context to either him or my uncle. And I don't remember what I got a text from you, but my uncle texted back, "Are you alright? What happened? What's going on?" Like, multiple...
Yeah. My response was, "The fuck?" As a usual response to many of these situations. So to get a bit more serious, I was in the hospital and I had an operation done. So I have kind of a feeling, I can sort of remember what it's like to be in those hospital beds. To be, I wasn't in there for too long, but I was in there long enough to sort of know what it's like when you're sitting there. Yeah.
What it's like when you're hooked up to something. Maybe like what it's like to wait, what it's like to be with the doctors, and I think, and I've also worked in a hospital before. I did some food work and stuff, so I know generally, and also my mum, as you know, works in the hospital too. So I generally know like what the feel of a hospital is like, and now I know what it's like as a patient as well. So reading this, I thought they really got down pat, like the actual feelings of like being a patient, what it's like to have someone near you. One thing they get right that some like manga and some other things are sometimes afraid to do, like a lot of movies and stuff will sometimes show like someone who's paralyzed or had something tragic happen to them, they lash out, and that does happen. But the way movies usually do it, they still they don't go too far with it. This goes really far into some even, I would say, uncomfortable territory. With like some of the chapters.
Because it's all the stress that builds up in that situation. And a lot of times, you're right, movies don't portray too much of that because there's some reason they don't do it, but it's a good way to actually show what happens to a person when they're under that level of stress. So they don't keep it. They usually don't keep it bottled in. It has to come out, and it's healthy, but at the same time.
Well, they bottle it up for a while, but when you have a patient like the guy in this who's in there for such a long time, and he doesn't know what's going on, he doesn't get his results like straight away. So he's just stuck there wondering, like, why can't I move my legs? Why is there pain in my legs? Why isn't anybody helping me? He just doesn't know what's going on. And then finally, like, he's sort of getting hints and they tell him, and he's, of course, having to face that reality.
Yeah.
And probably the best part as well is just how he... And I don't want to cover this too much because I want to review this, of course, now. But probably the best thing in it as well is it also covers, like, one thing that I always think about is, would people come and visit you if you're in the hospital for a long time? Like, I had a friend of mine who said this, and I think it's an interesting point. They said you could probably tell, like, who your real friends are by the people who come and see you in the hospital. Because, like, people, you hit, like, let's say it's a minor accident, like you've broken your arm, okay? And you're not at, like, a couple days of school. Like, in some cases, some people maybe can't come because of school or work or whatever. Okay. You have, like, an injury that's a little bit more major, but still not, like, life-threatening. But you're in there for a long time, okay? Yeah. So let's say you had a head injury or something like that, but it's not super major. If a bunch of people who you think are your friends come and visit you, and they see how you are and all that, and then they make sure you got everything you need and all that, then yeah, they're probably your friends. If one person, though, what this does is it shows, like, there's people that just come one day and don't really, they try, like, they're not there to, they don't come there, like, they don't come there on the day he needs it. Like, a bunch of people from his school who he's not really friends with, like, the people on his basketball team, they come in, they bring drinks, and they basically act like they're doing, like, a celebration thing because they're trying to pretend like nothing's happened and he's still, like, sort of part of the basketball team. And they're bringing him in to, like, celebrate the drafts and things like that. And, like, that, you can tell straight away from the situation that they don't really care that much. You can also tell that he's a bit bitter and he's got some... he has issues before the accident, but these are, like, amplified by the accident. So yeah, I thought Real was a really interesting manga, and I've kept reading that. And I think it's probably my favourite thing by him because Slam Dunk has a weird sense of humour, and is a weird shonen thing written as a sports manga. Like, it's paced like Dragon Ball Z. But it's a basketball manga, so it's like, and by Dragon Ball Z I mean, like, Dragon Ball Z the anime, where it's like, Goku's gonna stand up and do the spirit bomb, and he's gonna, like, do that for the first half of the episode, and he's still gonna be doing that, like, the second half of the episode, and Frieza's gonna make a monologue, and then the episode's gonna end, and then another episode's gonna start, and then Goku's gonna drop the spirit bomb. And then the Earth's gonna break, and then Frieza's gonna attack, and then Goku's gonna attack, and then there's gonna be another episode.
I don't even know how they managed to, keep people entertained with that.
And that's why they made Dragon Ball Z Kai. Sorry, Dragon Ball Kai. Yeah. But that was what Slam Dunk is a little bit like with some of the episodes, where it just takes too freaking long to do some of the basketball matches, and some of the relationships are, like, written well, but some of them are like with Real, where there's characters that are, like, really fleshed out and well written, and have, like, the authors clearly put a lot of thought and study a lot of things. And then he's got one or two characters where it's just like, you had a good idea, and then I just didn't care about it after a while. Like, you just need to focus, like, more on this and less on that. But I'm talking about it too much. Like, I'm basically almost reviewing it. So yeah. Read that, done that. I played a little bit more of Danganronpa, and I watched footage of that.
I'm still waiting for a sale on Steam for that, so once I get it, I'll have a go at Danganronpa and see how it is.
It's still...
Although I'm not gonna play the first one because I'm pretty sure the anime just spoiled everything.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely get Danganronpa 2. and see how that is.
I watched a bit of it, and I didn't play it, but I watched a bit of it, and it's really weird because it takes place on like a beach or no, it's like on an island or something.
Oh, Danganronpa?
Yeah, Danganronpa 2 is like on an island.
Oh, number 2. Okay, yeah. That's the synopsis of it. It's taking place on some kind of summer vacation home, and so all the characters have to now listen to the female version of Monokuma, and try and survive whatever that is. And it's a brand new set of characters, but no less weird than the original characters.
There's still some of the original guys in there though.
I can't remember that.
Well, one of them you won't recognize because he put on weight.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah.
What was it? It was the
dude with glasses.
Yeah, the dude with glasses. I remember now.
Oh,
that's right. Jeez, that's something.
Yeah.
I didn't think stress eating would be that bad. I mean, wow. Seriously, he's just like the fat geek guy from the first game.
Yeah.
It's like he looked at him and thought, okay, that might be a good idea now, considering what I just saw. And oh my god, I'm again involved.
Yeah. I honestly, since I haven't seen the game, I don't know if they're forced into playing it again. I just watched I skimmed through some footage, so I didn't actually watch the start of the video and that sort of thing and get the gist of the actual story. I just looked at the actual gameplay. Because I would be the only thing I am curious is, are they forced to come back in and play? Are they captured?
They probably would be. They probably would be, since in the anime and possibly
they escape
the first
at
game,
the end of the anime.
Yeah. But in the anime and the first game, just the anime, you are given 10 episodes in or something. A bit of a look of what actually happened in the outside world. Where apparently some organization that has the face of Monokuma has kind of taken over the world and is creating chaos and anarchy. And essentially the students at that school were put together to essentially protect for the world's future, because they all were particularly unique in each way, and this could have actually helped in the future. I'm not sure how a few of them would have helped in the future, but hey, I'm not going to, I'm not going to judge it, especially since they somehow think that a leader of a biker gang, a Korean idol, and a baseball star, a NEET, and what was the best one?
There was a pop idol.
And a
swimmer girl. She's
swimmer girl. Someone who's pretty good at investigating.
MMA martial artist.
Oh my god, that was crazy. And we have forgotten about the best one, which is the the multi-personality psychopath. The multi-personality murderer. I'm not sure how that would have fit well into that group, but okay, we're not going to judge you for that. Even that screws you over in the end. But obviously it has screwed them over in the end, and that's what we get. So it is an interesting premise. Now I would like to at least play the game to see how the mechanics work, since the only last investigative type games I've played was a game called Unheard. Still haven't come back to that. And also Sherlock Holmes Crime and Punishment, which is actually still a bit of fun, but obviously it's a bit of fun, especially when you have Sherlock Holmes from, I think this is the old Sherlock Holmes, back in the 60s. I had the name of the actor in my head, but now I can't remember.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
I can't remember, but it's the old Sherlock Holmes, which is, I'm kind of hitting myself, not literally, of course, because I've actually been recently watching old Sherlock Holmes movies, and the actor's name just flew out of my head.
But, I'd just be interested because they escape at the end of it.
No, they do.
And I would think after the first game and them escaping, I'd want to be as far as fuck as I could, from that. So I assume they have to be forced, which is kind of stupid because it's just sort of a repeat with some of the stuff that's already happened. But
then if that's how the world is, and they're trying to test the strongest and smartest people.
But it's kind of either way, let's move on to what we're reviewing today. So we were talking about stuff to review, and we've picked a manga that's gonna be. We're gonna get into that. We've picked something that's gonna be able to talk about sort of our history with sort of how we met as well, actually. but we'll get into that later on. But first, we're going to talk about a series that's relatively well known. It's not. Sometimes I pick something that's kind of unknown, but I decided this week I'd pick something that's sort of well known. But I wanted to talk about it because I have very different views from a lot of other people that have talked about this. And I. Sadly, I don't have my notes here. I wrote down like 2 pages of notes and I completely forgot them. So that's kind of shit. But I have. I'll bounce off of Eric of this. But we're going to talk about Monster today by Naoki Urasawa. You might have heard of it. He also wrote another series that is called Pluto. And that is based. It's kind of a version of the Astro Boy story. And I actually enjoyed that. That's quite good. And he also wrote 20th Century Boys, and he wrote something else. But he's heavily influenced by Tezuka. You can clearly tell on his art style. And the main character in the show is called Tenma, which I believe is named after Doctor Tenma is the Doctor, I think, the father of Astro Boy in the.
Oh, okay.
I think that's if I remember correctly, that's the connection there. Well, you know, his Pluto is about that sort of thing, and it reimagines Astro Boy and a lot of those other characters from that series, and it's not bad. I don't mind it, and I like Monster too. I don't want to feel like this is shitting on Monster, because I do think it's a good show, but I do have my problems with it. But before we get into my problems and pros and cons and whatever like we usually do, Eric, can you tell me the plot of Monster, just from the first episode?
Oh, just from the first episode. It's the story of a young doctor who's a Japanese doctor who has flown in and stayed in Germany to essentially become a neurosurgeon.
Yeah. He's working in Germany. Yes. He's became sort of a.
He's a rising star. And he's a genius, and essentially this is the first episode gave me more of a. Well, the beginnings of it gave me more of a Doctor Strange or House MD kind of feel, you know?
Okay.
You got a genius doctor who appears to be who's praised by everyone and seen as someone who can fix almost any problems. But of course, this is closer to Doctor Strange because you don't see the flaws of it at first.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, further down, you do get to see quite a few flaws about it. But from the first episode, it appears to be the story of a young doctor from Japan who's just essentially working as a neurosurgeon, and you figure out that he's a genius, you know, from the praises everyone gives him, and he just does some of these great, amazing things. But at the same time, it does also figure some of the issues of what being a doctor is like.
Yeah.
Especially with a director that's apparently thinking more about the reputation of his hospital than...
It's very much based in politics and budget and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, who comes first, like saving lives? Do we put a patient who's in worse treatment first, or do we put a patient that's going to give us a boost in money that's going to be good for our reputation as a hospital?
But in this scenario, the very first we see of that, we kind of have no idea why they did it. But I guess the whole story.
We don't get the full scope. We just we
don't.
Yeah, we see him operating
unlike later on. But in the first 2 patients that are the deciding factor, you know, in this game of politics in the hospital, is the difference between a guy who gets what is it? A guy who
Turkish man.
Yeah, a Turkish man who's injured from a workplace. Yeah, head injury in the workplace, and an opera singer.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can kind of get a sense of why they decided to pick the opera singer over the Turkish guy in the construction yard, because the opera singer is much more famous. They would have been given greater reputation at the hospital.
Good press for them, all that stuff.
Exactly. But of course, because of the fact that the young doctor, Dr. Tenma, was pulled out at the last second to perform on the Turkish man, having to perform on the opera singer. There was a lapse in the period where the Turkish man could have been saved from the minimum understanding, and the Turkish man ended up dying. So what this already starts creating is the conflict between Dr. Tenma and basically everyone around him. It starts to create a conflict with the grieving family of the Turkish man, his wife and his son, because he realizes the choice that was out of his hands led to this situation. He also begins to realize that the director and his daughter that he was dating have their own different views and opinions of where they stand in the world, which is higher above than everyone else. And Dr. Tenma, who's a true doctor at heart, he doesn't care. This is where I kind of think that a comparison between House MD and Doctor Strange might be drawing the line, because House MD, his character was pretty linear, right? He was considered to be, while a great genius, a bit of a sociopath as well. And Doctor Strange was like the director of this series. He only thought about the reputation, the money, and I guess unlike the director whose skills we don't know about, Doctor Strange was a genius neurosurgeon. But in this one, Dr. Tenma is far from the same mindset as those two, because he thinks more about the patient than than actually the money, the reputation, the politics. He's only there to save the patient. If he could save a patient right there and then, he will. This, I've watched 3 episodes, and I can see how this, the culmination of his choice to save a different person from whom the director wanted him to save later on, created, grinded him to a halt in terms of where his life is. So in the 2nd episode, that's when things started falling downhill, which is pretty quick. But I can see in the long haul of it, it's what kind
let's put a big spoiler tag here. We're gonna spoil some chunks of this manga. Sorry, this anime. But let's be fair, it's actually a pretty faithful adaptation of the manga, so we're spoiling the manga as well here. I think you could also make a comparison a little bit to Blackjack as well, which is a Tezuka work, because that's also about a doctor, and that's also dealing with 2 very controversial issues within the medical department.
Although I guess the one reason I didn't really make a comparison to that is Blackjack's outside of the laws of the medical practice.
But two things he does, I thought maybe not similar, but we're touching on issues similar, which he touches on at Blackjack. He touches on the issue of pay. Like of doctors. He touches on there's something controversial where Blackjack always charges a lot of money to his patients, but the reason he does that is because his justification is, well, I think a patient's life you should be willing to pay this much if you're willing to save someone. Now some people might have a different view of that. There are good and bad sides to that. Personally, as someone that's grown up around people that, my mum went to the hospital and things like that, I see the importance of doctors getting paid and things like that, and I do think in some situations some people in the medical team are getting underpaid, which I think is an even bigger issue than doctors getting paid more or things like that, if you wanted to get into that. But that's one issue that Blackjack sort of touches on. That could be considered controversial, that is sort of in line with the issues that we're dealing with here. There's also the other issue that is, Blackjack will sometimes refuse to operate on certain patients even if they give him a lot of money or something, if he feels morally that something's wrong. So there's questions like that. There's, is having a license a good thing or a bad thing if there's these restrictions? And there's, a lot of these sort of restrictions come in, and a lot of these issues, you could say, sort of come up here because you are dealing with a pay issue as well with this too, because you are dealing with, well, what am I going to get more money, a better reputation, a better car, a better wife, all that sort of thing out of as a doctor versus Versus, if I let this patient die and operate on someone else. One issue that I don't think you've brought up that maybe they weren't touching on, but I still think is interesting and something that I think should be touched on more, is something that's kind of hard to talk about and is a bit scary, which is if you're a doctor or a nurse or anybody that's worked in a medical field. Or even I have a cousin who's worked as a lifeguard, sort of life-saving position. Anytime you work one of those positions, you're going to have someone die. It doesn't matter how good of a doctor you are. It just happens. And I think not only is Tenma upset because I think the reputation and all the fact that he has to let a patient down, but I think also the fact that he's lost a patient and he has a feeling that he can save that patient and he hasn't been able to.
There's a sense. There's a bit of a sense of that, and I don't know if it was in the first episode or the second episode, but he does come to that realization, after being confronted by the widow of the Turkish man, and realizing in a flashback that he, when he was about to operate on that man, the director was the one who told him, "No, operate on the opera singer. They're more important."
And a doctor who we think is less experienced and less qualified, ended up operating on the Turkish man and didn't quite, and doesn't seem too bothered by it. But the reason I bring this issue up is I think one issue that maybe isn't even talked about or touched on. You could say that the doctor and all these people, you could say it's money and it's, higher ups and all that sort of thing. But with some of these doctors, you could also argue that maybe they've seen their share of patients go on them, and after a while they've just said, screw it, life, doesn't matter, money matters.
Actually, that's in that sort of line of thinking, there was an episode of another medical TV series, Scrubs. As comedic as it was, it did include quite a few.
There were a couple serious episodes.
There was actually no. It was like the majority of it was quite comedic, but every once in a while they included parts which were quite serious. And what you just mentioned, where doctors kind of don't start caring less and less, that was touched up on one episode, where the young doctor, the main character, who's looking up for his mentor, who's kind of reflecting his own thoughts. His mentor had the same thoughts, eventually coming around to thinking that some of these patients you kind of shouldn't bother about them because they're becoming waste of space. That kind of thinking does occur quite a lot of the time, because to these doctors who are trying to save patients' lives from life-threatening situations, when you have a patient who's just lying there for no other reason, to them they might think, or without a justifiable reason to them, they might think, well, why should I bother? What's this patient going to give me? What are they going to do for me? I'll just probably leave them there and let them be somebody else's problem. So something like that is I've seen quite a few of that in other TV medical dramas, but that's a really prevailing problem.
Well, I think in one of the episodes, it's a bit off topic into what you're talking about with Scrubs, but I remember there was an episode where they touched on, I think Brendan Fraser made like a guest appearance on one episode, and he was playing, spoilers, a character that was dead, but they didn't realise he was dead, and he'd been walking around, and it was all about accepting that, and accepting death and that sort of thing. And to get back to what we're talking about Monster, that's something that can really weigh on people's conscience, that can really drain them. Being a surgeon or any person in the medical profession, even I've worked in food, and I know people have worked in cleaning. It can be a stressful ass job. Not even if you're just counting what you're doing, the actual hours can be crazy. When you get your breaks, like how much sleep you get. This stuff's getting better now, but it hasn't been great. And I would imagine what's interesting that we've talked about is both Germany and Japan have a similarity that you could talk about. They're both very stern cultures, and they're both kind of quiet cultures. And they also have more so Japan, but maybe Germany has a bit of this too. There is definitely that very strict, very rigid nature, but there might also be a bit of that, where we see in Japan where it's the nail that rises up gets nailed down. You want to stay in line. You don't want to go too far. You don't want to stand out. You don't want to embarrass. You want to be perfect. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
With what people want for you and that sort of thing. You could say that's also in German culture and in this as well, because there's elements of that. You can definitely tell it's a Japanese perspective on German culture and that sort of thing. It's interesting. I think the first 3 episodes are really solid and have a really good beginning, a middle, and an end, and really good setup for what's to come later on. So let's, because I'm just about to get into my big cons. So let's get into some pros and cons. Let's start with the let's start with the pros. Eric, what were some things you liked?
Just the whole setting of it, really. I feel like it's a good beginning to, because from what I've seen of previously of what other people have mentioned about Monster, it seems to be a good start to, just from the first episode, a good start to a doctor who seems to be spiraling down from, given his situation. His situation does slightly improve, but because of a decision he made previously, that might actually, spiral things down for his life later on. So I'm actually interested to see where that goes. And I guess watching this and making the comparisons to some of my favorite shows and other characters like Scrubs, House MD, and Doctor Strange, it's what makes me enjoyable, because I did really like those shows and that character. So that's my biggest pro, is just the whole setting and how the story seems to be playing out. I'm really enjoying it so far.
I really like the art. As I said, the art's got a very... I definitely think there's a Tezuka influence in there, but he's also got kind of his own style, and I think he's not only influenced by Tezuka, but like Tezuka, he's also influenced, I think, heavily by European artwork and by the European setting and things like that. I think it's a really interesting setting. We see some stuff in Europe, and we see stuff in Germany, but the way Germany is presented to us is very different from the way it's presented in this show. It's actually treated like an actual location and not like a fantasy location, which I feel is the way Miyazaki movies usually do that. Like, there's a couple different movies that Miyazaki and Ghibli have done where it's set in Europe, like a very pretty European setting, but it's kind of like a fairy tale setting.
Yeah.
While this, this is just very real, just set in Germany. The other thing we haven't even mentioned is the fact that it's the 80s as well.
Yeah, it was in the 80s. I was about to say that. The 80s, Germany in the 80s, and even the mid-90s, which is around the period so far in the series.
The wall was still up at that period.
The Berlin Wall did not collapse until 1991.
And I think this is 86.
It would be 87.
Okay.
So, no, you're right, actually 86, because it was
I think the anime is 86.
9-year break from there. So, yeah, this is Germany in 1986, and a bit of an interesting time, but yeah, as you mentioned about the pretty scenery?
Yeah, the pretty scenery.
This isn't really... There's not much of that in this series.
Yeah,
I don't think.
There's pretty views, but I don't think the point of it is to show how pretty it is and how.
But it does give a good setting to how depressing it is a little bit, especially for its time. Yeah, that's one thing I noticed. It's that it did really well.
Yeah, I think it is showing the oppression of the time and how the only thing I didn't see as much is I thought more people should be smoking. To be honest, I haven't been.
I think if you know the time period and what the country will like, especially if we include Russia into the mix, you would know that around that time, smoking was the least worst thing to see around there, and in the Cold War state, how societies were, and how much stress was there, included things that are a lot worse than just smoking. So I won't mention it.
But just from what I know of
So it might have been better not to see even a little bit of smoking.
What I've seen of my parents and stuff, of some of the pictures they've shown, of like family members and stuff, and I have family not in Germany but in the Netherlands, which is not too far, and my father's been in Germany, and they smoke like crazy. They Europe can be quite a smoke haven, kind of like Japan's a bit like that too. It's better now, but it definitely was like, I know it definitely was like pretty bad at what, it was getting really, really bad at one point. And so just the fact this is in the 80s and there wasn't too much smoking kind of took me, because actually even in hospitals, they might have been smoking. If anyone's seen Jaws, the original Jaws,
because
there's people smoking in the hospital now, and that's 75 or something.
Yeah, because it's also trying to make me think, when did they outlaw smoking in certain areas? Because they outlawed smoking on planes in the 90s, I think it was. Because you were allowed to smoke around on planes.
Do it in the bathroom if you're gonna.
No, not even in the bathroom anymore.
Okay.
No, you can. It's not the fact you couldn't smoke in the bathroom. You can smoke anywhere on the plane. Around that time. But then at some point around the 90s, they created a law outlawing smoking on, banning smoking on planes. Period. You couldn't smoke there. Yeah. So I think it was just a matter of planes being tight fit compact compartments that
and you're in the air as well.
Exactly.
So your lungs and your ears are affected by smoking too. So when your ears pop and you've done smoking, it's a whole other thing. Yeah. But we're getting too off topic with this whole smoking thing. But I just thought it was an interesting observation that I thought with the 80s time period, that, as I said, I thought it was very gloomy. But I think what's really good about this show, the thing that definitely stand out to me in like the first 3 episodes, is the fact that this show is definitely something you could show to someone who's not an anime fan at all. It's got a little bit of it, like, because I think it'd actually turn off some anime fans, because it's got an art style that isn't really very popular with the anime community. Yeah. It's got a unique look, but it's got like a look that anime fans sometimes don't like.
I wouldn't think the art style would be. I shouldn't think it's the most off-putting thing about the series.
You don't like it?
I do like the series. I do, and I do find the art style. I find the art style decent enough. Yeah. But I guess some of the off-putting would be, I guess, from the first episode where we see the sort of weird offsetting animation of the rising building, like when the camera pans up to the building, the building almost looks quite 3D-ish, and
maybe there's some bad CG for the time period.
CG. That's one, like out of place sort of animations. There's something I wouldn't that kind of put me off from it.
I'm glad you noticed that, because I didn't really notice that, the animation. Yeah. I just mostly noticed the just the character designs and that sort of thing. But I noticed that the opening is very cinematic, and the music is kind of a cinematic too.
I actually like the ending, because that was just completely out of there. It was
that feels just like an anime ending, to be honest. Like, it's just a
even though it wasn't sung by someone.
Picture. Yeah. It's kind of like a fairy tale thing, but it's got that very dark German
very dark
thing to it. And I think we're going to get into spoilers, and we're going to get into some cons here and now, because there's a couple things I want to talk about. I've said spoilers before, but I really want to put spoilers down now, because one thing we talked about, that it's set in the 80s, and we talked about the wall, and this manga has a huge focus on, like a lot of us, especially when we look at the 80s and stuff, Nazis and things like that. That's still something that, when you think of Germany, that's still sort of something you think about, even though, I've met some German people, they're nice, there's no, I don't think every single one's a, descendant or is one or that sort of thing, but it is something that comes to mind when you think of that country. It's just part of their history. And in the 80s, it was, you think about the time period in the wall and like what was going on. There obviously was some tension and some people still left over from that era that were still trying to sort of get back to that era and still had a belief. And with this, there is this sort of creepy underlining thing of these guys sort of trying to create a new Hitler and trying to recreate that, and they're using this guy Johann, who is they believe is the next one, because he He's this horror. He's a sociopath. He's a serial killer, and what we find out in the first episode, basically, Dr. Tenma can't save this Turkish guy. He dies. He saves this other guy instead. He feels really bad about it. And then what ends up happening is, I believe, the mayor or some sort of politician...
Yep, the mayor of the town.
The mayor of the town comes in. Everybody says, you gotta go do the mayor. But we've got a young kid who is very young, like maybe 10 or so, maybe even younger than that. He comes in with his sister. His sister has, like, she's in shock.
She's in complete shock, trauma.
She's in complete shock. So, Tenma says, fuck it, I'm going to operate on the young boy, you know, and because he's in worse treatment. Makes sense morally, and as a doctor it just makes sense logically. Sadly, what we find out is that this is, you know, this ruins his career, but sadly what we also find out is the patient he saved is not a great person. And you know, this is just unlucky circumstance. It's not really Tenma's fault when you think about it. You know, he could have saved the mayor, and you know, let the boy die and still have his career. But he doesn't know the context of why the boy has been shot. He doesn't know any of this, and it's not his fault. He's just trying to do his job as a doctor, and it's just about unlucky circumstance. And this boy, who we find out has been in an orphanage and has been sort of groomed a bit to sort of, and has had other problems and has sort of been, as I said, groomed to be the next sort of Hitler, and because we have this tension obviously from both sides of the wall, and as I said, we still have remnants of this era that's horrid, and you know, where people were doing horrible things, and some of those people are still left over and still want to bring that back, and we see the ramifications of that, and that I thought was just, that's where the time period and the setting is used really well. Yes, it is playing on a lot of things we already know about Germany. Yeah, it would be kind of interesting if they did something different, but the setting and everything and the way it's done, the way it's written, that's all good. My big problem with this show, and the reason I want to talk about it, I've heard people talk about how great it is and how amazing it is, how people love the pacing of it. People love all the characters in it. One person I heard reviewed it said, I really like the fact that even when it's not focused on Dr. Tenma and another character, I'm still interested. Well, my big problem with it is I think the first 3 episodes are really solid. No problems whatsoever. You know, the main female heroine is not so great, but hey, you know. There's a female heroine? The main female character who is Dr. Tenma's wife in the first part.
I don't really like her.
Yeah. She's not a great person.
I feel like she could be an easily forgettable character.
I do feel that after a while you do kind of get sick of her, and they try to do things with her, and it's just doesn't quite work. That could be another con as well. You could label it this, but the biggest con for me is I actually don't think the pacing is that great. After the first couple episodes, they do sort of a really good arc in a couple of episodes after that, but it kind of meanders for a while, and it tries to do other things with Johan. It's like, well, I'm not that interested, and then it tries to pay it back later on. It's like, well, I kind of lost interest at this point and this point here, and I didn't really focus much on it because it was boring me and it wasn't interesting me. And then you give me this interesting thing later on when you should have given me this point here. And then there's chapters where Dr. Tenma's not, like, in there, and it's like, well, maybe that episode needs to be shorter, because there's parts of, like, Tenma not being there and this character being there that just aren't interesting. I don't know how to describe it, but the pacing sometimes, just for me, just doesn't work as well as I think it should. Like, I'm happy that it's only 70 episodes. I'm glad it's not longer than that.
It is quite a long series.
And I think the final climax and everything that happens isn't really bad. But I feel like it could be summed up a lot quicker. And I feel like moments of it kind of drag on a bit, and it feels like it meanders. and I really want it to like it and not feel that feeling, because I do kind of like that we're going on this long journey, but at the same time I don't like watching a story where we have one really simple end goal and we're going to just stretch it out for a long series of chapters. I felt this way with Jessica Jones. A lot of people loved that show, talked about how great the pacing was. I thought with how long the episodes were and how many episodes there were, there should have been maybe 5 episodes with the first villain at most, because there were lots of cool moments, but then there were these in-betweens that were like, well, you could have put that later on. You could have done this later on. And seeing our character lose so many times in that series gets you to lose interest in the character, lose hope in the character, and you don't root for the villain. You just sort of be like, well, this villain is, how are they going to stop him? He's just impossible, After a while, you just stop caring. And, you're just like, well, they're just being mean now. And that's sort of what you feel a little bit with Monster, because there's not too many victories a lot for Tenma. There's always these sort of twist victories where he sort of gets an upper hand and then he doesn't and then he does. And, that's interesting in some ways, but that's interesting for 12 episodes. That's not interesting past that, to be honest. You've got to have some really big victories for him, and I mean really big. You've got to have him. You can have him fight. Him finding out stuff's cool. I like that, but you've got to have some really big victories in there. I know this is like a very Western thought and feeling that things have got to be sort of good. I know with a lot of I know the way that Rousseau is approaching this is the same way that some very artistic authors that I sort of don't like, but I can appreciate and understand what they're doing. I see a lot of art that there is this sort of argument where, well, why does the main character have to win? Why does this good things have to happen to them? Isn't it interesting for bad things to happen to the main character? Isn't it interesting for him to have a lot of faults? Isn't it interesting for him not to have a female love interest? Isn't it interesting for this to die and this thing happen? And I think you can make an argument for that, and there are interesting things like that, but I also think sometimes too much of that can just be too much of a downer, and sometimes it can also cause you to lose momentum, and you're just chucking too much bad at your audience and not giving them anything to really boost them up to keep going.
So it's almost dragging. It almost starts to drag itself. Or just dragging on without having any sort of conclusion where you feel satisfied, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I still want to give it a wash and see how I feel.
I don't think it's bad. That was my problem. I felt like I had to slug through it a couple times.
Well, I mean, I don't think I've ever come across a series when I had to do that, but hopefully this will not be my first
I felt
one.
it was a bit of the midpoint. As I said, there was some really solid in the first chunk, and then just after a while, it just sort of meandered for me a bit. But do you have any cons of it?
Not
you
so
brought
far.
up the animation.
I guess because there's some weird moments in the animation. The most prevalent one would be the CG animation involving the hospital building, which I thought was a bit off from, the norm. I know a few anime series do that, but for this one, I just thought, okay, that's a bit out of nowhere, and then it's hardly used. The rest of the episode. And I was just thinking, what was the point of that? Was that just like an effect to use? Well, that was an effect to use. Why don't you use it for any other parts of it? Because there was a few parts where they could have used it. This was a bit of a strange thing to me. That's my only con so far. Because I actually enjoy the pacing for the first 3 episodes.
Yeah. No. I love those the first 3. I think. I think after that it loses for me. That's my problem with it.
But that's basically my only con. The animation part so far.
Yeah.
What was your? You already explained your con.
I've said.
Yeah, I was going to ask. What was your con?
No,
hang on. He already explained it in length.
So let's move on. So did we both watch this in sub?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. See, I sometimes watch this in dub. Sometimes watch it. I've seen actually. And Eric hasn't. I don't think. You've seen
No,
the dub?
never
Okay.
seen the dub.
I didn't think the dub was good, but I didn't think it was bad either. It was passable. There was some good performances here or there. You know, it was fine. The sub was pretty good, I thought. I really like, I think I might butcher his first name here. I think it's Hidenobu Keiuchi. He's the voice of, or Kichi maybe? Maybe you don't pronounce the U that's in there, I don't know. But he's the voice of Hei from Darker Than Black, and he's been in a bunch of stuff. He's the voice of Tenma.
Oh, wow.
That's what he is.
Damn.
And I thought he did a great job. And the guy who, I can't remember his name, but the guy who voices of Johan, or Johan in the series, I think he is, he's voiced by the guy who also voiced Yusuke, if I remember correctly, from Yu Yu Hakusho. And also a bunch of other characters that when I looked at, I went, oh, that's not what I would think for the guy who played Johan. You know, he's got quite a good range, I think. And I think both the actors do a good job. They both play off each other quite well. Another pro, I guess, and I thought the music generally was pretty good. I had no problems with the music. It's very orchestral, which sometimes isn't for me. Here, didn't mind it. Actually, kind of suited the setting a little bit. I mean, I'm glad they didn't go full like German music sort of thing. There's you know, they could have like Euro trap music in this, although then it would be sort of more 90s.
Honestly, I've only ever heard Euro trap used
or they could just
crack
play
videos basically.
They could just play 99 Love Balloons all the time. It's an 80s song.
Let's not listen to that.
As the opening.
No, please, no.
By the way, if someone hasn't made an AMV of Monster with 99 Love Balloons, they totally should.
Don't give anyone any ammo.
Because it is an 80s song and it is an 80s city, so it makes sense.
Still no.
But and there is a German, you could get the original German version too, so you could, really go with the setting. But yeah, because you could have that. You could have accordion or like horn section music, like polka sort of music if you wanted to. But I'm glad that they didn't do that. But yeah, no, I generally liked it. The dub and the sub are kind of. I guess I'm gonna go sub probably on this one.
Well, I haven't listened to the dub, so
yeah.
Subbed would be there for me, I guess.
Yeah. I go for both just as a fair chance thing. And also I've done dubbing before, not for professionally, but I've done it as part of my sound engineering degree, so I understand how hard it can be.
Yeah.
And I think there are really good examples of it. And I think there are some good, like the two main leads in the dub aren't bad, I thought. It's just some of the other cast and they're kind of there sort of thing, hit or miss. But yeah, generally Monster, pretty good show. I think it has some pacing issues sort of in the middle, and I think the ending's okay, but I think it's just it needs an editor in a couple places. but other than that, not a bad show. So yeah, that's my final thoughts on it.
Yeah, these are my final thoughts as well. I'm probably gonna continue to watch it, see if I continue to like it, and see if I can get past the pacing issues described. Because I am enjoying it so far. It does remind me of those three the two medical dramas and the one doctor in watching it. So I want to see if there's any more of that along the way, and if there is, I'm really going to enjoy it even more. But yeah, that's pretty much me.
Alright, we'll be back after the break. Hi guys, we are back from the break and we have a very special thing we are reviewing today. I actually have a physical copy of this in my hand that I can show you guys. Why
you make it sound like it's the rarest thing in the world?
It's not. Well, actually, have you been able to go out and buy volumes of Zombie Powder?
I haven't been able to find a copy of Zombie Powder.
See, so it's not that, it is kind of rare.
Yeah, but online still exists, so...
Yeah, okay. Whatever. This is the first volume of Zombie Powder, and we are going to talk about it, but I picked this because me and Eric met through, we met at high school, we've been friends since high school, but the way we met, Eric was reading a Bleach manga, I don't remember which one, Maybe you do.
Definitely was the first manga, first volume.
Very first volume? Not the one with Eric-Ep on it? I remember you liked that volume with Eric-Ep on it.
No,
Yeah, the one
it was the first volume.
She's doing the Spider-Woman pose.
Shush.
Alright, well...
Definitely not my favorite, definitely wasn't my top favorite cover. But it was definitely...
The first cover?
The Yoruichi cover.
Really?
Yeah.
You looked at that one a lot.
Shush.
Alright. So me and Eric met through Bleach, basically. Like, that was the first thing that we bonded over. We met, we talked about it. We both have cosplayed. I've obviously cosplayed as Ichigo, having my fucking red hair. Because, hey, if you have a character that has your hair color, and you don't have to dye your hair or put a wig on, they're great, you know.
Yeah.
I did Chio from Fruits Basket as well for the same fucking reason.
And I put a bit more effort into mine. I have managed to cosplay as both Kyoraku Shinsui.
Yep.
And also as Kisuke Urahara.
Yep.
Both of these characters were my favorites when I first got into Bleach. Because Kyoraku was just this flamboyantly overpowered individual who, when we first see him in terms of understanding his power, basically was sitting down and blocking what could be considered a 20 RPGs from an anime. All the while with one hand, all the while drinking sake and is going, yeah, anything else? And then
and speaking of characters, Eric actually has a sword from his cosplay here.
Urahara's sword.
Yeah.
Of course, not the real thing, but a copy of it. And this is, I really wanted this and I bought it. And I can tell you right now, this was for cheap, for obvious reasons. Nobody would buy an actual sword for, I think it was $40, $50.
Okay, and it's technically blunt. It's not like a real sharp blade. If you actually see the blade,
indeed.
It's square sort of on both sides. It's not sharpened.
And way filthier than I thought it would be. Let's see. But yeah, this is Kisuke Urahara's sword. Kisuke was my favorite character and one I also cosplayed. And the sad part about that one is that I didn't have a black cat to follow me around.
You did have the hat and.
I had that. I managed to get the hat. I managed to get the kimono. I even managed to get the blonde wig.
Now.
And a cane.
One thing I have to mention, Eric, you actually sewed all that, didn't you? If I remember correctly.
No, actually no. The Shinsui Kyoraku cosplay and the Kisuke Urahara cosplay were all pre-made. I never made them. The clothes I just bought secondhand.
Oh, okay. So you did what I did.
No, the only two costumes I've ever made by hand were the Fura from Full Metal Alchemist and the Millennium Earl from The Grey Man.
Okay.
The Millennium Earl was probably my less favorite one because I didn't think I got the mask right or the face right.
I haven't actually seen it, so you'll have to show me some pictures.
Oh, if only I don't think I have any pictures from that time. Unfortunately, due to a few mishaps over the years. But,
I don't have any pictures of me in cosplay, which is a shame because I did Ichigo a number of times. I think I only did his Bankai form, his main, his final form. Oh, you know the one with the long sword.
Do you
remember that I don't think I made the big sword.
You made a partial sword. You didn't make the exact scabbard.
So I did have the big.
You had the big blade, and I thought, wow, you're gonna poke somebody's eye out with that.
Okay.
Actually, I think that was my first comment when I saw you in that cosplay, Connor. It's fantastic, but you're gonna poke somebody's eye out.
Because I had the long. I remember the long sword because it's still actually somewhere. I think in one of my dad's garage or something like that. The big long.
Oh, geez,
main
really?
Bankai sword. Yeah, and then there's the Shikai or whatever it is, the smaller black one. Sorry, the bigger black one. But yeah, technically, I must have done both.
Yeah.
But I think I just wore the same outfit. I don't think I changed it very much.
No,
basically the black gi sort of thing with the white gi underneath. But we met over that show. We both really liked the art. I think that's one thing we can admit. I think one thing we definitely would mention with this and with Bleach is the fashion actually is really good for TT Kubo.
Oh yeah,
it's the number one thing I noticed. He just has a really good sense of clothing and how.
Well, I mean, in terms of Bleach, it was in the first few chapters, before they had to go through the massive arcs. But in the very first beginning, when everything is explained about the whole world, the fashion sense there was fantastic, and it was even quite highlighted in the openings in the anime. Where we see all the characters, dressed different ways, and it all look really good.
Yeah. I do have to say though, I think the anime of Bleach doesn't capture what the manga brings. I think the manga Tite's just such a. Are we gonna call him Tite Kubo or we're gonna call him Tight Kubo? Because I've heard.
I'll say Tite Kubo.
Okay, see, I think Tite because I think. With the Japanese pronunciation, I think the I is the E and the E is the A. I've heard some people call him Tight Kubo, or some people call him Tite Kubo.
I don't know why.
But he has a really good sense of fashion. He can be quite cinematic with some of the, even just the, what would you call them, like the chapter covers?
They
can be very, like, he puts a lot of effort into them. And just the outfits of every person, like the Soul Reapers, who basically just wear like a black gi thing, all of them, there's something, even if they're all like wearing the same outfit, there seems to be something slightly different about them that makes it unique to that character.
Definitely.
Which I really like. One of your characters you brought up has a
Shinsui Kuriku, who wears
pink kimono.
A pink kimono, and he also wears a traditional straw hat. And he also has flowers woven into his hair, and he has an assistant who likes to throws flower petals there, not because she likes it, because she was ordered to. And I'm not sure what would have happened if she refused.
So, I actually went recently back and watched some of these old shows like Naruto and Bleach a couple of years back just for nostalgia. Because I'm still watching One Piece because that's still going, but both of these shows, One Piece and Bleach and Naruto ended a little while, a couple years ago.
Not Bleach, yes. Naruto, not so much.
Bleach the anime ended differently from the manga. We know that there's manga continued a little bit longer. Anime sort of stopped at a certain point.
Yeah.
Me personally, I thought the anime didn't quite capture some of the colouring was weird. Like they changed colours of the hair, clothing, I'm nitpicky with that. I know, but
well, no. The thing is, one thing I will agree with you on that one is that in the very first instances of me watching the anime, I thought it was a little bit blurry, a little bit foggy, like watching a slightly brighter version of a Silent Hill movie.
Yeah.
It was all okay. There was some brightness there. But still, when you get into the action scenes, when you get in depth into the world of when they explain it, you kind of feel like it's gotten a little harder to see through with the animation. But I think it was around after the
sorry, by the way, we're just gonna spoil shit because it's ended and this is something we watch and we're not gonna review Bleach. We're just gonna talk about it because we feel it's something we into.
Yeah, as I was saying, just after the Aranka arc, that's when the imaging got sharper. It got much more colorful, got more defined.
I just thought what you've described actually sums it up. It looked a bit cheap. It looked a bit like weird, like just colouring wise, brightness wise, just something seemed off. And then also, I think what didn't help is there was like a lot of bad filler. Yes.
A lot of bad filler.
There was a lot of bad.
Actually, the few fillers I enjoyed watching. Oh damn! I can't even remember them completely.
I think we can both agree that the second movie was really good though.
Oh,
the second Bleach movie.
Definitely. I mean, other than the only I have one downside to that, and it's just one moment, but the Diamond Dust Rebellion movie was pretty good.
I thought the action was really well done. A lot of the music was well done. Usually with their movies, they were pretty good. The first movie was kind of not great. Like they needed some more time with that, and they clearly needed to get the original author on board.
But the action scenes for the first movie was still pretty good.
Yeah.
That's something I really like, despite the fact enemies being somehow generic little cannon fodder.
Well,
the action scenes were still quite good.
The best pro you could give is some of the action stuff is done pretty good in the anime. Hearing some of the attacks actually being called out is pretty cool. Yeah. The music, I think, is the biggest pro for the anime. The music was pretty solid. The openings and the background music.
I think the music for pretty much every opening of Bleach, or just about every opening, I only remember up to the 14th opening. They were all fantastic.
Yeah,
I even the endings were great. Like and even the music, the sound effects, especially in the very first Bleach anime was really good and really memorable. Yeah. I even have some of that stored around somewhere in my files.
I would say that we though did bond over the manga because I do think Naruto we liked. We liked One Piece.
I
think we were bigger Bleach fans though because the art, just something about the art was connected with us. The way he draws action.
It was simplistic and also complex at the same time. And I like the way he even drew the expressions of these people, whether it was drawing up close or further away. The faces do set the mood and the scene quite well. If the mood is somber, the faces still reflect that. Even from far away where they don't have mouths and there's just the eyes somewhat drawn, you can still see that the way they're drawn, even in the simplistic fashion, did convey that. Which is something I really liked.
Was there? So you've brought up your two favorite characters being Shinsui and Kisuke.
Yeah.
For me, I if I remember correctly, I liked. I liked Kenpachi a lot.
Well, I think that's a bit cheating because everybody likes Kenpachi Zaraki. Like even if he was your enemy and you were about to get killed, you just kind of think you're so awesome. Like he's crazy, he's out of control. He's always got a big grin on his face. The only time he doesn't is when he's either worried about people or when he's not killing them. Yeah. Which is basically his shtick. He's always looking for a fight. And you find out later on why that is, why he's the way he is. And you can't fault him for that, but you also kind of think, you have to fault it for the person who kind of made him like that, or and that just makes him more and more of an interesting character, and makes you even sad the reasoning behind how he regained his power. Because if nobody knows by now, Kenpachi's power is actually almost sealed away in a way, literally, up to a point. So the whole time. So before the end of, I believe it was the Aranka arc, before the end of that, every time you've seen Kenpachi Zaraki fight, he has been holding back. Mental. It's all mental, okay, right? It's all mental. But he's been holding back. So every awesome thing he's been doing could have been made more awesome if he wasn't holding back. But then again, all of Soul Society would just blow up if he just decided to, unleash his full power. And as funny and awesome as that would have been, it kind of would have cut the story short.
But I liked him a lot, and I liked both Rukia for the first couple episodes, and I also did really like Yoriichi as well. I thought both. I would say the biggest con for Bleach, the biggest pro, not con, biggest pro for it that I think got it over for both of us, like, is a series, is the female characters. Let's be honest, but they're pretty good looking characters. But what
he has done really well.
He draws good looking female characters. But what I like as well is he draws good looking female characters. But they have a lot of depth to them, and they have a lot of good character to them. My biggest, like,
some of them at least. I'm not sure we can. I'm not sure what kind of argument we can make against, say, Orihime's classmates, the redhead one who has a thing for her. And then
that's just a joke character. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. But what I thought. Like one character that I thought was really well written, that we don't even really, we get hints but we don't know until later on. I can't remember her name exactly, but she's got her hair tied up like in sort of a weird
that's Unohana.
Unohana, yeah. we get a really good plot twist later on.
That was
I don't even
fantastic.
I don't even want to spoil that because
no, I don't want to spoil that
it's
either.
such a good plot twist.
Wow.
And it adds so much depth to the character, and you think about everything that's happened.
But then you can understand how she has that kind of typical what is it, sweetheart sweetheart personality, and then you realize there's more to this than we think, isn't there?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I thought she was just that was just a fascinating twist on the character. I will say the only character that's maybe like it's not funny, and after a while it gets a little bit weird to watch was I think her name's Nezu or Nezu. The assistant character to kind of the Frankenstein's doctor type character that who's interesting, but I did get a little bit sick of him beating up his main female assistant. That did get a little hard to watch.
There was no reasoning behind that, even though later on you kind of figure why he's kept her around, why he's created her, because he never really recruited anyone for his lieutenant position. He created her in his lieutenant position, even though she does have the physical capabilities equal to that level. You kind of don't understand why he acts violent towards her, and then later on suddenly have some kind of different mindset to this. It's
I thought it was interesting, but it was just sometimes not funny, not great.
He's definitely the least favorite character of the captains alone.
I think he's a cool design. I think there's some cool stuff they did, but it was kind of...
In terms of his character, he is the least favorite one out of all the captains. So, that is not involved in the
arc. But my main point I wanted to make with the female characters, so I went and, I watched Naruto again, I watched Bleach again. The biggest difference I noticed is the female characters aren't just there to be love interest for the male characters, or if they are, they get paid off, and he does a really good job of establishing relationships earlier on. Like, you get why Orihime and Ichigo at the end of the series, spoilers, hook up. You get why they get together, because there's just a chemistry and a friendship between them. It's not like a Naruto
they've known each other previously.
Well, even if we didn't do like the childhood friend stereotype thing, we just see they have a chemistry just by the way it's written. We see a chemistry between Ichigo and Rukia, but you could say it's romantic, but it's more just them as friends.
Yeah, I think Tite Kubo was kind of teasing us on that one.
He was teasing us, but I feel you get that more from Orihime and Ichigo, and I completely understood why at the end they were together. I completely understood both Rukia and Renji. Yeah. Even if you didn't tell me their backstory, I could still see them be. And the reason I bring this up is because when I went back and looked at Naruto, I saw when I watched.
I think I remember this conversation.
When I watched that series again, I said, "Jesus, you know who should have hooked up at the end of the show? Naruto and Sakura, because they actually have chemistry together. Even if you're not talking about romantic chemistry, they can be in a room together and talk to each other. They can bounce off each other. Yeah. They actually have a relationship. Bloody Hinata, who's introduced, she's really quiet. She doesn't say anything. She barely approaches Naruto. If they have any kind of relationship, it's almost physical attraction, maybe at most. But not much else, and we don't get to see them get to know each other really, or talk, or do anything that really
I think that's why there's a few comments.
Relationship forming.
I think that's why there may have been a few comments that Naruto the last movie rushed that relationship.
It was stupid and pointless and not worth and just came out of nowhere.
Actually, the only thing I liked about that movie is the fact that the Toneri, the main antagonist of that movie, and how he used his powers, and basically a few of the fights with Naruto, that was pretty good.
Cool, but we're not necessarily doing an Naruto review here, but I thought that Tite Kubo clearly he knows how to set up relationships. He's maybe even, I actually believe that he may have actually been in some, and he's not afraid to write it. Like I've read about Masashi Kishimoto, the guy who wrote Naruto. He doesn't like writing romantic stuff or doing that sort of thing. Tite Kubo, I don't feel that with him. His biggest issue is an author, and we're going to talk about it this. His biggest issue is he gets burnt out easy. And he works himself too hard to the point where his pacing sometimes starts to lose momentum, and he can be a bit repetitive. The biggest problem he does have with his female characters is he does tend to put them in the same situation. Like he does tend to have them get kidnapped, get cast away, but all the in between moments before they're kidnapped is really good, establishing them as characters, establishing relationships between characters. You get why Chad and Ichigo are friends. You get why you get why Kisuke and why Yoruichi are friends. You get the dynamics between these characters.
Yeah.
Versus I watch something like Naruto and I don't really. I think don't really get everybody seems like they're kind of fighting with each other, and then the characters that like actually seem to have an actual chemistry and a relationship
there's a lot
don't form an actual proper relationship like I think they should.
Exactly. The one thing I really liked about the relationships with Bleach and the way it was designed, it was already pre-established. Like it's already there. You don't have to look too much into it, But it's still, as the story progresses, those relationships develop. You find out more about them.
Well, Rukia and Ichigo, they don't know each other beforehand.
No, they
but
don't.
They develop a relationship, and you feel it's a genuine friendship between the two of them.
Whereas with Naruto, I could not understand more than half the relationships that exist. I could not understand the relationship between Naruto and Sasuke, between Naruto and Sakura even half the time, or Naruto and Kakashi, and then Naruto and then half the characters. It's like he seems to have, and also like Naruto and the whole village. It's I don't know what it is between him, because it seems like with the way Naruto was developed as a character, I would have thought by the end of it he would have just kind of whatever praise he would have received from the village after they, kind of royally screwed him over quite a few times. I would have thought he just said, "Well, fuck you, I'm out of here."
We've established he's just such a good character writer, and this manga here, this was Zombie Powder. This was his first ever thing that he wrote, and it wasn't. Obviously, me and Eric did not read this first. We read this, I think, both after reading Bleach. There are only 4 volumes of this. This is the very first volume. And on the cover, you can see the main character.
Gamma. Akatsubi
Akubi,
Gamma.
I think his name is. Akutabi.
Yeah, something like that. Gamma, but we'll call him Gamma.
But Gamma, you have Elwood, who's the main little boy. But I felt you could see early developments of what we just talked about, what we just described, of how well he's able to establish character relationships and how well fashion is done. You could totally see that in this. I would say, though, this is more taking a Western influence and approach, and I would say probably the more interesting thing with this is, you might not know this, but Bleach got some criticism for being too similar to Yu Yu Hakusho in its first couple bits, because they're both because they're both about character dies, they sort of become like there's similarities. This is very similar, I thought, to Trigun. Not in terms of exactly what happens, but they're both kind of set in like a post-apocalyptic sort of Western setting. Like, when I say Western, I mean like films, like Clint Eastwood films, Good, Bad, the Ugly, that sort of thing. Definitely takes that sort of influence. And I thought this definitely might have been influenced by Trigun, because it doesn't seem like it's exactly going like Trigun. I watch it, I'm like, oh, they're trying to do a shot from Good, Bad, the Ugly. They're trying to do a shot from this Western. They're trying to, sort of bring that sort of imagery in. This, I feel like, is influenced by that. It maybe, teaching some Westerns. We definitely know he likes Western stuff. And this is definitely more in that sort of house. And it has as I said, it has a very Trigun feel with some of it. You could compare both the characters, Gamma and Vash. They're both characters who come into town. They've got the big jackets on, and they're both kind of unassuming at first, and then they turn out to be sort of badass characters. Trigun a little bit more silly, and it's more sort of about accidents. And him accidentally being, a badass, versus this one where he's like kind of actually a badass. We get to see that. So I was quite happy to read this and see a lot of, what I liked about Bleach was starting off in this. And I really liked Elwood as a character. I think he starts off, you're not too sure about him, but once you read more and more about him, he's not just a wimpy kid or something, which is what you think at first. He's actually got his own skills, and he's actually a bit of a shifty sort of guy, which was interesting, very streetwise, smart. And we haven't actually touched on is the plot of this. What is the plot of this, Eric? Do you want to...
Oh, the plot of this is the main character, Gamma, essentially accidentally comes across Elwood, and Elwood finds out that Gamma is looking for 12 items. Yeah, about 13 items called the Rings of the Dead that, when combined together, can produce an item called zombie powder.
Yeah.
And what this can do is apparently a lot of things, which
make
includes...
you immortal.
Yeah, make you immortal.
Back to life.
Yeah, bring someone back to life. Maybe even cure an incurable disease.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the plot of it. And these characters are traveling around trying to obtain all 13 rings in order to be able to put them together, make the zombie powder, and then, bring someone back from the dead or be immortal. I'm not sure if there's enough zombie powder for all their wishes, but, we'll see.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first sort of chapter. We get introduced to the characters. There's a bit of tragedy.
Yeah, there is.
I don't know if I should spoil this or not, because it's not that...
Is it really spoiling if it's character development at its easiest? Because we're seeing the quick development done with the Elwood as the character, and why, giving him a reason why he should go on an adventure with Gamma. If not for that development, he wouldn't be going on the adventure. He'd just be kind of stuck where he is, doing what he does. Yeah. Or I guess without the gang members who are bullying him.
Yeah. So we have some sort of tragedy. We have that happen, and then basically Gamma and Elwood have to Elwood sort of forces his way in and ends up teaming up with Gamma.
Okay, there's that as well.
And then we are introduced to another member later on called C.T. Smith. He is a businessman sort of guy with a very good gun. He's a businessman gunslinger, but he doesn't use your typical
I don't know,
gun.
Honestly.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's a Western setting.
Yeah.
He doesn't shoot like a Western sort of cowboy.
No.
He shoots very much like
John Wick.
No. The way I would describe him is he seems like a character out of an old school Michael Caine 70s gangster sort of thriller thing.
Yeah.
Like a Get Carter sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's very much feels like that sort of thing, or like a Guy Ritchie type character. He feels like something sort of a bit 70s, like maybe, inspired, like British 70s sort of thriller sort of thing. That character, you drop him in a Western, like that's him. And then, you've got Gamma. Gamma is... First thing we could talk about is he's clearly an early design of Grimjaw or
Grimjaw.
Yeah, he's clearly, if people know that character, he looks a lot like him. And there's just a couple, tweaks and things that make him look a little bit different. The
most obvious comparison would be the covers. When Grimjaw was on the cover of Bleach, the design of his looked exactly like the cover of the manga we're holding up right now, or we have right now. So imagine Grimjaw, and this is exactly what it looks like. So that was made as I'm not sure if it was a bit of a...
Maybe a bit of a nod.
It was a bit of a joke thing that was made, or at least a bit of a reminder that Tite Kubo created something else other than Bleach.
Yeah.
Yeah. but yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely very. He's got a very distinct look. But he looks kind of like I don't know how to describe it. Like, maybe the best way I could describe it is he looks like someone... Well, I said Trigun. He's got a bit of a Trigun look. But you could also say he's got a bit of a Final Fantasy look. Like, he's got a bit of that too.
Are we talking about the...
Like early Final Fantasy.
The hair, the coat, the sword.
Yeah.
I think these are the three main
he's
components.
We didn't even bring up... So Bleach, one thing Bleach is very much all about is the swords. Tite Kubo, or Tite Kubo, whatever you want to call him. he is all about the sword.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
all about the way he wants to draw it, the different designs of it, how he's going to do it.
Oh.
This series, same thing. He's got a very distinct sword. It's a chainsaw sword. It's very cool.
There's a sword with about 4 jet engines on it that allows someone to spin it, 400 miles an hour, and I thought this is actually cool. That has to be the coolest sword he's drawn so far.
We've got our main characters. Elwood has got a sort of a skill for throwing knives. He's a very street smart guy.
He's a pickpocket as well.
Pickpocket as well. And we get introduced to another female character later on. I don't know if you got up to that point.
I got up to that point, yeah.
She's
I can't remember her name.
Journalist, if I remember correctly.
Not a vigilante, journalist of justice.
Okay.
Takes pictures of criminals in their most
deprived.
She takes pictures of criminals in their most inappropriate times, and then prints out these pictures and pisses them all off, makes enemies out of everyone.
Yeah.
And then her latest victim was a guy who was just I don't know what it is. It reminded me of another manga series. But essentially, yeah, she takes pictures. She gets all these pictures of these criminals. She's regarded as a hero, and she's got her own tragic backstory. And overall, I think she's a pretty cool character, especially since she's she knows how to. She not only knows how to fight, she's got a weapon you wouldn't expect to have.
She's a very. I would also describe her just like we talked about Bleach. You could see a lot of a lot of his great writing for female characters that can look really good, but are also just really well-written, well-rounded female characters. You have that with this character too. She's a well-rounded, well-written female character as well. And she has good chemistry with Gama and with the other people on the team.
More or less.
I thought most of them in general as a team, and I think the biggest con we can get into right now is the length of this manga. There's 4 volumes. Because Tite Kubo got burnt out and just got too stressed out writing his first manga. Couldn't continue. Sadly, this ended and doesn't look like it's going to come back, sadly. Which is a real shame because you can see a lot of potential of some good stuff coming
I thought just reading this for the first time, I thought it was great and would have been something I would have loved to see continue.
I think the biggest con as well that is there as well is some of the fights do drag on. They don't seem to be as Bleach's fights aren't bad, but there are some that drag on that maybe aren't so great. But I would say he's gotten much better. We could both say at writing fights as that series went on, as Bleach went on, and this is very early on. So some of the fights not so great. Some of the techniques were okay. Some of the characters that get introduced are kind of, they're all right, but they're not amazing. And you feel like you don't get enough of them to get to know them, and sadly, we're not going to get enough to get to know them a bit more. Because as I said, I feel like there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of stuff coming up that he just couldn't do. I feel like he had a lot of ideas, and a lot of them probably went to Bleach. That's probably what happened. He wrote this. Then he had an idea for Bleach. He wrote Bleach.
Yeah,
and then he probably had ideas left over from this and said, "Well, I'll add them to Bleach."
That was might have been a pretty bad idea since if you're not really good at multitasking or kind of having a separation of ideas, because we know that Zombie Powder and Bleach are 2 different aspects. So
I just mean plot points. He might have said, well, this character dies, or this happens to this character, or this type of death happens. Maybe he decided later on to do that, because these both deal with the concept that Bleach deals with, which is about afterlife and death and that sort of thing. They're both sort of dealing in that, but they both deal with it different ways and take different perspectives, different settings with it. But they're both dealing with that issue. I think it's just there's a lot of potential and a lot of stuff that could have went with it, and there is. I would like to see is where some of these characters are going, but what I think is he's done a lot of that with other characters, and he's added aspects that he was maybe going to add later on to Zombie Powder, to Bleach. That would be my guess, because there's a lot of stress probably when he was writing this. Editors hitting him, all the time with, can you get this done? Can you do this? We need more of this. There's a character in here in Volume 1 that was barely introduced. It's a bad guy that barely came out, and apparently a lot of female writers wrote in and said they liked it, and so he did another doodle of it. But I would imagine he probably had some people in the office saying, hey, that character was really popular with the females. Could you, bring that character back?
I think that is
because that does tend to happen with manga, and that's why we sometimes see bad pacing or characters that aren't interesting.
Like the best. I guess the best idea to have about how that works would be reading, a manga about manga writers, especially Bakuman.
Yeah.
As one of the examples. I had another example in my head, but it's kind of gone now. But in Bakuman, it was really interesting and kind of made me think of what, later on, what the situation was like with Bleach. The character, a series which continues on that, and so when at some point the popularity of it doesn't hold up for the magazine that prints these chapters, they kind of have to tell the writers, look, this isn't very popular. Can you improve it, or we're gonna have to dump it? Yeah. And so we can see, from that series how some mangas rose and fell. And I'm, going back to Bleach, looking at the ending, I just kind of thought this was just.
I didn't think the ending was that bad. I just thought
it kind of left up in the
final
air.
Villain maybe wasn't perfect.
Well, the final villain, I thought it was completely overpowered to the point of how do you defeat him? Like, what is what did you pull out?
You haven't seen Dragon Ball Z: The Future Trunks arc, man, with the Dragon Ball Super. That's an overpowered villain.
Wait, you mean
Zamasu?
Oh, okay, no, I probably haven't seen.
Those who have seen Dragon Ball Super and have seen Zamasu know what an overpowered villain looks like, because you think that's overpowered.
Yeah, but I mean, in this instance, it's like it is an overpowered villain, but at the same time, it didn't just leave me disappointed at his defeat, and the way it was done. It also left me disappointed with the some of the conclusion to relationships that haven't come up, like what happened to Kisuke, Yoruichi, Grimmjow, and Nell. Nelliel, who was there as well. Like, what happened to some of the other characters? Or like, what was the reason for the rushed, power that Kenpachi had at some point?
There was some really good points after the Arrancar arc and before the Arrancar arc, but the Arrancar arc, there was some parts of it that just weren't interesting, and it did feel like a rehash of, like, we now got...
It was almost a carbon copy of the Soul Reaper arc, of them kind of
because someone being kidnapped, and then Ichigo and other people were going to fight, and then do power-ups, like...
It was almost the same It was
same setup.
It was the exact situation, and it was like somebody getting kidnapped, them finding a way through with the help of Kisuke. Then along the way they gain some allies. Then they reach their destination and realize they have to fight a whole bunch of weaker people, and then they have to fight the big baddies. And
I thought what was his name, Ukiura, or I think that's his name. I just thought he wasn't that interesting as a character. But
I thought he gave us a pretty good a good idea of the sort of power and hierarchy of the whole thing.
But we're getting too much to Bleach again. So you can see how much we like Bleach, and you can see why we picked up this and why. And as I said, I do really like this. It's got a really good sort of Trigun feel to it. If you like Trigun, actually, this is a good place to go. And it's only 4 volumes. That's both a pro and a con for me, because I do like the fact that it's not too long. Because I think the fact that it is short means that he doesn't have to rush things too much with some of the fights. Some of them are a bit rushed, but they're not as rushed as, or dragged out as much as some of the fights in Bleach. I think, honestly, if someone told him, hey, you can do this, but you have to wrap it up maybe in 10 volumes or something like that. Or, I don't remember what the exact length of Parasite is, but Parasite's, I think, a pretty good length in volumes.
Yeah.
It's long, but it's not too long. I think something like that. I think with because this... Would you classify this as straight, like, shonen action fighting, because I almost kind of wouldn't almost.
I mean, even if the length is only 4 volumes, that's still.
Because I think my biggest
I still think
pro too of this.
Yeah.
That maybe Bleach, if there's one thing that it did kind of do badly, is and it fell with like a lot of other manga do, it does have the typical shonen archetypes. This doesn't necessarily have all those shonen archetypes. There's no pervy master type character that's in, that's basically, or let's be honest, there's no Master Roshi basically character, because that's what all of them are doing. Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, all of them.
I wouldn't think there's a pervy master in Bleach, like Kisuke.
No, Kisuke is.
Well, I wouldn't consider Kisuke to be I'd consider him to be quite a silly character. I'd consider him to have
But he is the master who is slightly pervy. He is basically. Let's be honest, he is, and he's also the guy.
I'd kind of disagree with that, considering his character. If I'm comparing him to Jiraiya from Naruto, I think Kisuke is as far from being a pervert as.
So I think
or even Roshi, yeah.
I think we can agree that maybe. See, we like Bleach because we think Bleach. I think Bleach clearly took those archetypes and wrote them a bit better. But I think this show doesn't really have them as much. I think CT's, he's a cool character. He is, you could say he's kind of like a Piccolo, but he's not a rival character. He's not a Vegeta. He's they clearly definitely have a rivalry, Dama and CT, but it's not written the same way that like Piccolo and a Goku, or Vegeta and a Goku, or a Naruto and a Sasuke, or a Renji and an Ichigo. It's not written kind of the same. It seems less like an archetype and more like an actual character rivalry thing, which I really liked. And that's just one thing I noticed. And I think if this was a really, not too short, but a little bit like longer, not by much, but maybe, as I said, 10 volumes, maybe a little bit more, I think this could be really, really solid. And I would even maybe say this would be better than Bleach if it was like that. Because I feel it wouldn't have the problems that Bleach does, because I feel Bleach is just too long. I feel like once you got to the Soul Society arc, that was like, you've done your really good arc, you've got there, bam, cool.
True.
Same thing with this, there's like a really cool point, except what this does is, there's a cool point, and then you're like, oh, but where's the end of that arc? Like, if you got to the end of that arc, then you're cool. Because I think every shonen, every one of these sorts of types of shows has has an end point where you watch it and you're like, okay, that's the arc, that's the big final finish, that's the that's the crocodile, that's the Baroque Works arc in One Piece, that's the that's the Chakra Curse Mark, Kidnap Sasuke arc, which I think is actually generally good. That's the.
It was a pretty good chase scene.
That's the Soul Society arc and Bleach. These big arcs. So I think if it had that'd be really good. But what are your final thoughts on this, Eric?
On Zombie Powder?
Yeah, would you recommend it to someone?
Yeah, I'd recommend it as a good read. It's definitely a good read. I can't remember exactly everything that has happened, and I've had to reread it. But I do definitely remember at least the first volume and the first few chapters, and it so far does lead on to a good story, good chunk of characters, and it's an overall good manga to look at. Yeah, the only as you've described, the only con thing is because it's so short and because Tite Kubo burned himself out, writing this. If he hadn't done that and went on to write this manga at a longer length, might have been far more enjoyable. Yeah.
Cool. All right. This has been Alternating Sloth Pod. One more time. This has been Alternating with Eric. Episode 19.
Bye.
Catch you later.